All right, very good. Thank you for your patience. Take it away, Mike.
All right, so I am Mike. My pronouns are they, them, and I'll pass it to David to introduce himself.
My name is David Reinholdt. I guess my pronouns are him and his, or he or him.
You got it.
And I'm Tricarico. I use they, them.
Gretchen, I'm staff and she, her.
And we will get used to sharing our pronouns as we implement with HRC. So thank you everybody for sharing. We don't have a very packed agenda tonight, and I have to be completely transparent that I personally have not made very much progress on our goals. But that may mean that it is just a relatively short meeting, although we can discuss for the full hour if we like. Gretchen, you mentioned that you put approval of minutes. Are our notes from July technically minutes, or are they notes?
I know.
Did we approve those or not?
I think they're technically notes, so I don't have a strong opinion. You can do what you want with those. If you have corrections, I can make them.
Did anyone have any concerns or corrections in the notes? Let's just check in on that. I don't think we need to formally vote and approve, but thank you for always Gretchen. Thank you for putting notes together, because we'd be a little bit lost if we didn't have you doing that. So our topic, our big topic is really around communications related to the survey. We have had a newspaper article in the Salem Reporter about our survey, and we had a social media post, I believe, didn't we, Gretchen?
Mm-hmm.
And what can you tell us a little bit? I don't know that I saw it it came out last Saturday.
Oh, or maybe the week before. I'm hezzy on time, but there was a piece on social media where you could click over to a news story that took you to information about the survey. And then also we included it in our what's called the Friday email, which is an email. There's a lot of people who subscribe to getting an email on Friday afternoons, and that was in there too. So I believe that it was Facebook and the Friday email that were the mediums. There was like a graphic and then a brief thing, and then you could click for more information that had this story.
I wonder if you could even share with not just us, but the whole HRC, like a link.
Yes, I should be able to do that. Yes, I will find that and do that.
Yeah, terrific. Well, we talked last time about videos, and we talked about a number of different concepts for videos. And I recall, Gretchen, and I probably need to pull up the notes to be able to speak intelligently or semi-intelligently. Yeah, so we talked about last time about the difficulty about finding testimonials. So we kind of talked about doing a mix of videos. It seems like that we would try to find some folks who could provide like a testimonial, like we initially talked about, but that we might also have some more scripted videos that are just more kind of general informational. I haven't made any progress on any scripted material, unfortunately, in the past month, but I thought maybe we should just discuss more what our video concepts might be. And we did talk about having commission members serve as spokespeople within the videos. So you might get up and say, hi, my name is Mike, and I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission, and we, you know, and what we, a little bit about what we do and that kind of thing.
I could offer 2 updates about the video project since our last meeting, if that's all right. I reached out to CCTV and described the project, and they're certainly happy to collaborate with us. And we have a meeting set up for next week to discuss details. And so I wanted to ask you all tonight what questions you might have in terms of, or preferences you might have, things like format or length of time or what you're seeing. So I thought I'd see what you all could share with me to talk with CCTV, and anybody's welcome to join the meeting. We're going to talk via digitally. So if anyone wants to join, there's a time on Monday afternoon that we're looking at.
What
And
time is it
then
on Monday?
let me look. I've been emailing with Soha there, and let me see what I've got, if it's on the calendar yet. We were talking about Monday, August 31st at 11:30 a.m.
Yeah, I can make that meeting.
Oh, Mike, that'd be lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
When we confirm that, I'll send you the link. And then the other update is that I do have a yes. I appreciated the conversation at the last meeting, and I kind of took another look at some names and situations that we've assisted with, and then reached out to one individual who expressed delight at the idea of sharing their story. They've got a issue with their calendar coming up, so they perceive being available later in September. And we set a coffee appointment for kind of mid to late September to meet and talk through the idea in a bit more detail. They asked if I could do that. And so again, I would invite your feedback on kind of things to say or assure or questions you might have for the individual who's open to sharing their story. So those are basically 2 updates. I've got another idea of someone to ask. I just haven't had time to do it yet, but the conversation helped me kind of think about the options people could have. Like you said, they don't have to be visible. They don't even have to use their vocal cords. Maybe if they wanted to write something that one of you would read, for example, that's a choice. So that kind of helped me think about it a little differently.
I mean, I think the biggest question that we would answer in the 2, I keep thinking of it as 2 minutes, but it could be, you know, whatever length of time it needs to tell the story. But the biggest question is, how did HRC help? And do they, I guess, and would they report their issue again? You know, that kind of idea of, was it, you know, do you view this as a resource that you would come to again if you had another issue?
I was thinking that, and you know, what did the process look like? Because I think there's a lot of confusion about like what it is we actually do and like what things we actually help with. So not that everyone has to share that, but if someone was really struggling with what to say or share, it's like, okay, what did the process look like for you? Like a brief overview. And then, yeah, how did it help and would you do it again? Are kind of the main ideas I think that we want to see. And I agree with Mike, it should definitely be short, like 2 or 3 minutes at the most, just to be able to use it in a variety of places and also not like overstimulate people, because everybody's tolerance for staring at a screen is probably getting shorter and shorter these days. So I want to honor that.
Did you get a sense, Gretchen, from the person that you're meeting with that they would want to be on camera, or that they would want to just provide their background and their story? Or is it more of a wait and see once you meet with them?
I'm not completely sure. Truthfully, I thought maybe initially on camera, and then in the follow-up, I was less certain, maybe the more that they thought about it. So I don't know.
Um, uh, it has also occurred to me that in the absence of having people's stories, if we aren't able to get very many, that we could write some spots. And I think I maybe floated this even last time, that we could write some spots about the survey itself. You know, did you know that in a recent survey, X number of Salem residents reported, you know, experiencing discrimination. If you're experiencing discrimination, there are people who can help you with that, and you could kind of extrapolate from there what the rest of the spot might be. What do you think? What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think that's good. I was thinking another similar vein that commissioners could do, you know, would be like why we joined the commission, right? What are the things that we like doing on the commission? And like talk about some of those projects, because it may not necessarily be like, oh, we helped this person who experienced discrimination, but there's a lot of other cool things that we do too, right? So if we don't have like a ton of testimonials, it might be worth asking what commissioners would be willing to talk about different things. Because we do have a really diverse commission, which is really cool. And I think that'd be nice to highlight, as well as, you know, some of the other things that we do that aren't necessarily related to discrimination that are really important.
I'm also wondering about what one of you said about people aren't always sure what we really do or what the process is. And I'm wondering if we could somehow unpack that in a way that's interesting. I don't know what would cause someone to click on it. Maybe some provocative questions like, has this happened and you've thought about calling someone but didn't think it made sense? Or
yeah, like what do you do when you feel like you need to call the police, but it's not really that's not that's not serious, but a crime hasn't been committed, but something's definitely wrong, kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's a great question to kind of entice people into clicking the video. Better worded than that, but a question
right.
along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I love that idea. Have you ever experienced something that gave you a bad feeling, and you felt discriminated against, but you didn't know who to call? Because nobody broke the law, probably. You know, it's just a different kind of feeling.
When you said, have you ever, that game came into my mind. Is it never have I ever? I almost wonder if, I don't, maybe this is inappropriate. Part of me is wondering if it is, and whenever you wonder, perhaps it is. But another part of me is wondering if a play on that would get someone curious what we're talking about. Like, never have I ever stopped in my tracks when I approached my property and realized I'd been forked. I remember talking to a person who had this happen. They had a bunch of plastic forks stuck in their yard, the tines down, and then they looked around and suddenly thought about how they're the only family of color on the street and were horrified. And they did call, and they knew that I had no idea who had done it and that there was no remedy, but they wanted us to know, which I thought was valuable. And it was also just an opportunity to talk to them, you know, and to be able to say, on behalf of the mayor's office, on behalf of our community human rights commissioners, we're really sorry this happened. You know, it's not, you know, denounce the hate. If it was hate, we shared together. We didn't know the motive of the person who did it, but you know, so like I'm thinking about that. Never have I ever. I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
I think that could be powerful, Gretchen, because I think that kind of goes to the concept of making people aware of the privileges they have, right? Like there's probably a lot of things that people who don't look like me in Salem, who aren't white, have experienced that I've never had to think about, right? Similarly, there's probably a lot of straight people who've never had to deal with what I've dealt with. So I could see that actually being a pretty powerful tool to talk about, like, hey, this is something that people in our community are experiencing, and this is what we're doing to support them. Because it's kind of a double-edged sword of raising awareness of like, yeah, there are some things that we need to address. Here's how we're going to do that, or here's what we've done. Here's what you can do in the future. I think that could be really powerful if it was done correctly and done. Yeah, I wouldn't want to make light of a situation, but definitely bring some awareness to some of the things that are happening in Salem.
One of the things that that just seemed to stay with me, I think this person called in my first year, but they called and just felt certain that they had been mistreated at a dry cleaner's and that they didn't get a refund on a shirt that had been damaged because of the color of their skin. And it's one of those situations, regrettably, this is partly why I have trouble finding testimonies, because it can be really difficult to actually verify or substantiate. I called the dry cleaner and they explained their policy and yada, yada, yada. I was unable to substantiate the concern, but I remember the person's very strong feeling that it was due to the color of their skin that had been mistreated. I remember at the time thinking, never have I ever had that experience at a dry cleaner, and I have all this, privilege. And I just found myself wondering if I had had a similar complaint, would I have had a different experience than this person did? And that situation, it's a simple one, but it just stayed with me. And, in that situation, I couldn't do much to help. I could treat the caller with respect. I could hear their concern. I had a discussion with a dry cleaner. I was unable to verify that there was a breach in policy. They explained how they just never refund these kinds of situations. And I explained that to the individual, but that can be a terrible thing to hear back, but I don't know. It's an example of a situation that can help call out that never have I ever experienced that as a person with all this privilege,
It really, really speaks to the issue of microaggressions and why microaggressions are so insidious, because it's not about the person's intent, but about their impact, as well as I think when you think about that dry cleaning example, what occurs to me is the same as what occurs to you, Gretchen, that I've never had to think that. But then I also think on the flip side, people of color have to think that a lot of the time. That the people are kind of rude in the world, just generally, I think, a lot of times. And when you're a white person, you're sort of accustomed to just being like, oh, that person is rude. But when you're a person of color, the question always lingers. Were they rude to me because, and I've had flavors of that as a gay person, like, were they rude to me because I was effeminate or something like that? But it's not nearly what people of color experience. So I think there's merit in the concept.
And I guess I just have to say for the record, and sometimes the policy is such that no one was going to get a refund in that situation, and it's just impossible to know, and there's nothing else to do or say, but the person can experience and have the impact of not getting the refund due to the color of their skin, but the dry cleaner may be able to show, I never refund anybody for this type of situation, period. And that might be accurate, and they might be the most anti-racist person in the world. I just, it's hard to know, but for the record, it's important to say, it seems.
I have a comment. So I don't personally think I've ever experienced discrimination against me. And I was really kind of surprised about, just because I don't really think about it in that way, our rating that we got in the survey. So maybe that's something we can talk about is like if we had a campaign that said, you know, the survey we got a C and Salem's better than the C, and you have different people saying, yeah, we're better than a C in our community. Maybe people that are from different backgrounds, but also people that are very prominent where somebody would see them and a lot of people would recognize the person saying that our community is better than this, just to build awareness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of speaks to what we were talking about in an earlier meeting about expectations, right? The expectation is that Salem is better than that. The expectation is that we're not treating people unfairly. And I think part of our work is setting that expectation. And then, you know, even if we can't necessarily get to a refund, we can still have those conversations with the business that even if we don't get that refund, it's clear that there's the expectation of treating people fairly, right? Of not discriminating. So I think even in the situation that Gretchen's describing where, you know, that customer didn't really get a concrete answer, but they still had someone in their corner saying, hey, yeah, let's look into that. Let's see what's going on. And then the business knows that the expectation is we aren't going to tolerate that. You can't get away with it, right? So yeah, I think that is a really important thing to bring up too, is it's not just a like, you know, gotcha thing. It's we want our community to be safe and welcoming and a good community.
I have to take a second and thank you for saying that, because I hold on to that, because sometimes that's all there is. Because things can be very, very difficult to prove and things slide under the radar and are so amorphous. And I'll frequently end the day telling myself, well, I'm glad that the person had a place to come and be heard. And I'm glad that the place of question or concern heard that the city is interested in this and has a value of inclusion. You know, and sometimes I hold on to those intrinsically having value because there's often not much else. So thank you. I just appreciate that. I needed to say that.
We often speak about these things in very either or terms. And, you know, it's not probably to the person about the refund. It was about how they felt. And your work can be to educate businesses a little bit more around how the person felt in that experience. And if someone experiences discrimination or feels that it's discrimination, then it's real for them, whether the thing is the thing. We do tend to have a society that is pretty focused on a very black and white justice system, where it's all about, you say you experience discrimination, prove it. And I think what you do, Gretchen, and what you can do is to not make them have to prove one way or the other how they felt. You know, how they felt was valid. And maybe the outcome isn't going to come out the way they wanted or whatever, but if they were heard and the issue was raised with the business, you know, you never know what the outgrowth of that is. Is the business going to maybe think a little bit differently about how they express their policy of not refunding people? You know, are they going to think about the tone that they took with the person that perhaps signaled to the person they were being discriminated against? You know, there's a lot there. I want to go back to something David said, though, and I'm sorry to ramble, but I really liked what David said about people who are prominent and visible in the community. And you earlier said something, Gretchen, around on behalf of the mayor's office. And it occurs to me that even though as much as I sort of sometimes rail against our hierarchical society, that there may be value in having some visibility from city leadership in this work, because it tells people that this is a city where the leaders are engaged in these kinds of issues, not just others. So I don't know if there's a role for mayor and council to play in kind of discussing discrimination, but I know somebody who knows them pretty well or interacts with them a lot, so I throw that out there.
I'd be happy to approach them and see if they'd be interested in doing something. We could think through what that would look like if you all wanted.
Yeah, I'd like that.
It's fun. We've thought of a lot of different ways to approach the videos as we've kind of explored. You can see a lot of potential video spots, and they could live on our webpage, and they could be laid out in a campaign as you all have talked about in previous meetings, where maybe in a different month, a different one comes out. It's really cool. There was also the person that Tricarico had talked about, who was open to doing a video. I know he's done one for us, so I didn't know if doing another would make sense, but I would never turn that down. He's a powerful presenter, but I don't know if you've seen his video. It's on our page.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah.
I really like it. So
yeah, he seemed interested in doing another one, and I think, you know, has also become pretty well known in the community as well. You know, speaking to David's thought about having someone prominent, I think that's another great kind of local prominence that could really make it impactful as well. But yeah, he seemed interested.
What about other leaders from our communities? I was just in the last meeting we were talking about Pastor Wade or Bishop Wade. Is that right, Bishop?
I think so, yeah.
And we were also talking a little bit in our last meeting. Sorry, David, last meeting, right? Not last meeting.
Okay.
We had LGBTQIA tonight. And we were talking a little bit about safe spaces for businesses. And I was thinking about prominent business owners, prominent people of color in our community. Are there people out there who are known and might be willing to lend their voice?
Yeah, David, I was sharing in the last meeting that I'm helping organize a Youth Voices rally where there's going to be a bunch of leaders coming together and talking, and also partially training youth on how to get involved with like local city politics, how to be on a board, how to get involved. I can bring this up as an idea to the group when we're in our planning meetings. The other flip side is that we are hoping to record this event and essentially do the same thing we're talking about now, make little snippets about each of the groups that are there. So whatever is done in the name of the HRC, we could probably ask for a copy of to include in our campaign, and or if it's done by them, provide something that can be used as well. So I can talk to, there's several leaders in there. In fact, there's one leader who shared a story where they felt discriminated against at a place of business, and they ended up having additional conversations. And even though the HRC wasn't involved, it's kind of similar to what Mike was talking about, of like, maybe that business didn't necessarily violate a policy, but that person's experience wasn't great. And I'm wondering if they'd be willing to talk about that, but I want to go into detail since it's not my story. And other people who, are well-known leaders in the community and maybe interested in participating in this project. So that's something I can ask about for sure.
Then once we produce these videos, Gretchen, CCTV also puts them on YouTube, right?
They do. That's correct.
Yeah, so we could have some good discussion, I think, with them about the distribution as well. Once they're on YouTube, they become very easy to distribute.
Mike, this might be a segue into a question I had for the team tonight. Does this committee or task force want its own web page off the Human Rights Commission page, or is this group a foundational support to the Human Rights Commission, and the things that you create and do land on the primary page. I ask that because, as you know, the LGBTQIA+ intersectional task force is about to have its own page. And the person from IT asked me, they said, well, taking a step back, do you have other committees? And do they also want pages? And that helped him as he thought it all through. And I said, well, we have one other committee and I'm talking to them, so I'll check in and see. And so I didn't know if you thought a page for the awareness group made sense, or if you felt that everything you do builds the HRC page.
Well, as you know, I usually have an opinion when it comes to websites. And my opinion is that our group is more foundational for the HRC, and that we don't really need our own web page, because the work that we do is to promote HRC. So that's my opinion. Any others?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Just pulling up our agenda. Are there other elements of the campaign? Now, we've talked quite a lot about the videos. Are there other elements of our outreach and campaign that, you know, obviously, I think we've talked about getting more out on social media. It was interesting to learn tonight, Gretchen, that you have a good list for the LGBTQIA groups, or that you have a lot of people that have signed up to that over the years. And it seems like you probably have equivalent lists for some other areas.
I don't actually. We have two mailing lists that are built in this MailChimp format. And one is generally Human Rights Commission, and the other is the LGBTQIA Intersectional Task Force. That was born a few years ago, back when the task force got created. The group said, we want to build our own email list in case people are interested in the agendas and the Transgender Day of Remembrance. So we started creating it, and it's just built. We haven't had others form. So I've got two mailing lists. The overall Human Rights Commission one is about twice the size. It might be up around 220. And then the LGTB one is about 98 or so, if my memory serves me. And each month I send the agenda for the associated group to that mailing list. And then, for example, when we have events or things, I would send that along as well.
So it seems like that would be a good opportunity to push out the videos and share them once we produce them. Email is always a great vehicle for that. And especially if you're using MailChimp, then you really can kind of evaluate how those emails are received, your open rates and things. I kind of obsess over that stuff at work. I read a lot of reports. So yeah, that would be, that seems like another really good avenue for us. I kind of think that as we're virtual for perhaps the next several months, that these electronic outreaches are a good vehicle for us. Do we have a master list of our organizations, like NAACP and the various organizations that we interact with? Do we have an email kind of list for them, or how have you typically handled that?
Actually, that's a good question. I don't, but that would be pretty easy to create. We have the master list of organizations, and as you might remember, it's just got everybody's web pages. I used to keep like an actual contact name and email, and then that seemed to fall out of date. So I just put the links of the web pages on the document. But like I could seek a volunteer or some support for somebody to go in and create an email MailChimp of our partner organizations. I think that would be a project that could just be done, you know, some afternoon. I could see creating that in an afternoon pretty easily.
It seems like something like that might be valuable for us as we think about distributing out this information, but also restarting our liaison program. Having a mail list that can kind of, I think one of the challenges I've seen that's inherent in what we've been wanting to do with the liaison program is that it depends on individuals to go out and reach out to those groups and keep those connections and keep those relationships. And individuals are going to kind of come on and off of the commission over time. It's just the nature of this type of commission. So it made me wonder, geez, should we have sort of a connection point with all of those partner organizations that's a little bit more formal, where we can choose when to deliver messages to them?
That's a good point. And to more completely answer your question, that's kind of what I tend to do now is many of them are in my contacts in my email. And so what I'll tend to do is when I get something, I'll just sort of go through contacts and start sharing it, as I know people, but that's a more hit or miss, risky kind of a thing. And it's a little more time consuming than if I had an email group. And I think at one point someone had suggested we could begin, maybe this was Bella, doing like email newsletters that keep people updated. We can share stories and reports of discrimination and event information. And you can imagine an email communication that came out from us to our partner organizations and to the individuals who signed up could be informative. If we could get to the point of developing the content, you could see how that could be really cool.
I like it too because it's accessible for people who are not on social media. I know Danielle has told me 1,000 times I'm not on social media. Don't try to Facebook me. Call me if you need something. and it I think a lot of people also these days kind of go on and off of social media because of things. It's not always the most pleasant place to be. So it may be good to have a really solid kind of email strategy, social strategy, and then we can populate those vehicles with these videos that we make. I really like this.
You could also do a Zoom meeting with all of those leaders of those different groups to get to know about HRC, like an intro to HRC, get to know us.
Oh, I love that idea.
David, I just went to one of those. There was a group that I really honestly didn't know much about and wanted to know. And then I got an invitation in my email and it said, hey, this is like us 101.
Uh-huh.
And I actually put it on my calendar and it was informative for me. It gave me an overview and an opportunity to ask questions. And I feel like I have a deeper understanding of who they are now, which I needed. That's a really good point. We could do those.
I love that idea. I think it would be so cool to have like Angelo and Krista kind of walk us through the HRC and why we're here. And then people could maybe even hear from you, Gretchen, about what your role is and the staff liaison, and you can take questions. I just think that is the bee's knees of an idea.
Yeah, I love that.
And doing it with the partners. So, Erica, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be great. And it's totally what, this rally that we're looking for. It's exactly what we're looking for. It's like, what is the HRC? What do they do? How do people get involved? And I think that's going to be so useful for everyone to know, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is kind of getting us out there and getting those leaders, because if the leaders are saying, hey, here's another resource to tackle this issue, we can get more and more involved with what's going on out there. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. I'd love to, talk to Angela and Krista about, getting some structure around that. So I think we could talk all day about all the different things that we're involved in, but try to use our time efficiently. But yeah, I think that'd be a great plan. I love it.
The other thing that I love about it is that it's conversation.
Mhm.
So it's not going to take as much time to get that off the ground as it is all of our TV commercials, which require us to really think through the content. We got to write it out. We got to figure out how it's going to get filmed and all that. That's going to take some time. This idea of the Zoom meeting, we could get up and running fast.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I just love this group. So many good ideas. So I think maybe what I could do is take that in my update on Tuesday as an idea and float it, or do you think we should float it with Angelo and Krista via email first and see if they're even interested?
I don't have a strong opinion about that because I think it could be generalized. Your update could share that, Angelo and Krista or designees if you prefer not to, and then that way they don't feel on the spot.
Yeah, great. Great. So we talked about our videos. We talked about social media, email, partner outreach, which is a very, very good idea. Are there other avenues that we want to explore this evening? Well, hearing none, do we want to do any, does anybody have any member remarks or announcements? Well, hearing none, would we like to adjourn?
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw smiles for that. Okay, let's do it.
No, I'm just laughing at the quiet.
Let's go ahead and adjourn them for the evening, and we'll provide that update to HRC on Tuesday, and we'll see you all next month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great
Bye.
seeing
Good to see
everybody.
you.